to play. We've got stories for your day. From Onefinity, it's clear to see the finest CNC. It's the Cutting Edge Podcast. Let's take a flight.
Welcome to the Cutting Edge Podcast presented by Onefinity CNC. I'm one of your hosts, Morgan Hop.
And I'm Stonefinity.
Everyone say hi to Stone. So today we're going to do this every once in a while. It's not going to be every episode, or probably won't do them consecutively, but we're going to revisit some of our older videos, specifically the ones that I made when I first started working with Onefinity. And so I figured the best place to start is with episode 1, where I talk about space planning. So I don't know if we want to, we can show a little bit of that. I don't know if we want to do that now or a little bit later. Well, I'll give you the gist of the video. My shop is only 284 square feet. So it's 11 feet wide, 22 inches or 22 feet deep. That's a very small space. It's about the size of a single car garage. And so for anybody with limited space, they think in terms of square footage, not in terms of total volume of a shop. And so they kind of trick themselves into thinking that they wouldn't have enough room for a CNC. And in my shop, I have 3 by kind of being creative with the space that you have. So that's the gist of the video.
Yeah. So, I mean, Morgan is in extreme circumstances here where he has very, very limited space. But a lot of people are working out of a 1-car garage or 2-car garage, have a car they want to park in there at night or things like that. So learning to use all of your space, not just horizontally, but vertically, is a big deal. Especially when you have a CNC that you can store vertically. That makes it a lot easier. But like Morgan said, there's a lot that goes into it. So let's do this. Let's go ahead and we're going to put the video up. And then we'll watch maybe a little bit, and then we can kind of talk about what we're seeing.
Hi, I'm Morgan, and I'm in the middle of building out my new shop. And today I'm building a rolling stand for my Onefinity Journeyman CNC. Real cool thing about Onefinity machines is that they're not confined to a factory bed. So you can swap out rails, give yourself some more capacity, make upgrades without having to replace the entire machine, and you can mount it to whatever workbench or table you already have. Or wall. Pretty cool, huh? In a lot of shops, wall space is often underutilized, so being able to put this machine on the wall and save what little floor space I have in this small shop is super, super valuable. And why is that cool? Well, it's cool for anybody that's been wanting to get in CNC but doesn't think that they have the space for it. Say you want to start an Etsy shop or a little side hustle, maybe even a full-blown business. This gives you a lot more options to be able to do that. So if you've been putting off getting a CNC because you don't think you have enough room in your shop, friend, I'm here to tell you, you do. Probably. The trick is, hi.
So that was kind of the, I didn't really, in that section of the video, didn't really get into the nuts and bolts of it. But basically a lot of people, the way that they set up their shop and arrange their tools is they'll take like graph paper, and then they'll measure their tools and cut out little pieces, or kind of shade in to scale where they want to put their tools based on the the square footage footprint. But that's not taking into account any of the vertical space that you have. I mean, that's where most of your space is from the ground to the sky. So I kind of you take that 2D kind of illustration of a shop layout with different tools around, and then I kind of flip it like this, and I show you here's the actual amount of space that you can work in. So by accounting for that, there's certain tools that you can stack. You can have lower to the ground, one sit higher above it, to preserve the square footage, but you're able to get the functionality of both of those tools in the space of only one tool. And so the tools that, my CNCs are unusually low to the ground. Most people don't work that low to the ground, but again, limited space. It was the only way that I was going to be able to actually get them in here. But any tool that I have in my shop that sits unusually low to the ground is what I call passively operated. I think I covered this on one of the last few episodes. But at a certain point, you really only have to get up close and personal with the machine for a few minutes at a time, at the beginning or at the end of an operation, kind of like a planer or a drum sander. Once you feed the wood in, but once those rollers kick in, it becomes passively operated. The tool does the work, and then you just catch it on the other end. It's kind of the same thing with the CNC. It's passively operated. I got to kneel down to load and unload material and change bits. But once I hit go, I stand up and go about my business. So crouching down for a couple minutes at a time, to me, is worth it to have the functionality of a CNC in the shop.
Especially when you frame it like you did, where, you're probably spending 5% or less of the time that you're using the CNC actually, interacting with the machine. Most of the time it is just sitting there and it's running the code while you're off doing whatever else it is in the shop.
Yeah. So yeah, I talk to people at shows all the time that, they'll say, I've wanted a CNC for a long time, and if I could get one, this is the one I'd get, but I don't have the space. And in my head, I obviously have a nicer way of saying it, but in my head, I'm thinking, is your shop in a walk-in closet? Like, no matter how big a space you have, I'm telling you, there is a way.
Yeah. So obviously you come from one side of things where you have a small shop, but in my case, up until we got this warehouse here for Onefinity, I had no shop at all. So my shop was just an extra room in my house because, when you're 25 and you live by yourself, you can do that. But, it's not something that it's not achievable. It is, you have to think out of the box sometimes. So I have at home, currently I have an Elite Foreman, which is our 4 foot by 4 foot machine. That's the cutting area. So the actual space, the footprint of the machine with the table
closer to 60 by 60.
It's about 6 foot by 6 foot. Yeah. So, I mean, you can definitely make it work. It's just, what sacrifices are you willing to make? So in my case, I started out and I had one machinist, and over time, obviously things grew. So I went from a machinist to having a machinist and a woodworker, then a machinist and a journeyman, and now I'm a machinist and a foreman. And all of these machines are inside of the walls of my house. So there's not a garage. There's not a shop.
It's not even like a craft room.
No, it is literally
a living room.
Right. So yes. So they have the formal, what was, I guess, the formal living room that was attached to the dining room. And my foreman currently sits where the dining room table used to. So if I got company, I still got a table, right? But
I would love to see your Zillow listing.
The pictures would be wild.
Pictures inside the home. Yeah, we just got some wood cutting machines this is the formal cutting room.
The formal cutting room.
Yeah, not the dining room. It's the formal cutting room.
Sign that says that. But yeah, I mean, I have
a chandelier hanging over the machine. With a dust hose zip tied to it.
I took the chandelier out and replaced the lights in that room. There was a chandelier.
There could have been a chandelier over your machine.
But no, I was not a fan of that. It didn't film well. But yeah, I mean, I've got a foreman and a machinist on the wall in my living room / dining room. And if I can do that, you can do a lot of other things. Your significant other may not approve.
Yeah, I was going to say, speaking to everyone who's not 25, bachelor living in a 3 or 4 bedroom house by themselves, for those of you who do have a significant other, your husband or your wife or your boyfriend or your girlfriend or whatever you call them, I do not recommend setting a machine up inside of the house without their knowledge or prior approval. If I just had my machine set up in the spare bedroom in our house, I think I'd hear about it.
Yeah.
So,
Well, even in my shop here, what we've got set up now, I've got about 500 square foot in this room, which is really just there for, making videos and doing tests and things like that. But even with 500 square feet, I have 4 machines in that room, and that fills up fast.
yeah, it sure does.
The one thing that I hear people say is you'll run out of room, like as soon as you have more.
Right. And so, like, that was kind of the other thing that I may have touched on just very, very briefly, but when you're planning your shop setup and you want to plan it for a CNC, whether you have one now or you're planning on getting one, plan a little bit more, a bigger space for the CNC, because if you're mine sits under the my Foreman sits under the outfeed of my main workstation, and my main workstation has my table saw, my router table, joiner, and planer on it, and it's all kind of built into this one. It's essentially an enclosure for the CNC, but it is just big enough for the machine to fit and be able to operate in there. If I had built it any small, because when I first started building this, and when I first started working for Onefinity, it was when I had just gotten my shop and I was still building it out. I was still setting it up. So I had a woodworker. That was the first machine that I got from Onefinity. And so I planned to have some kind of a little bit of a buffer, some space around that machine in the workstation. But then I ended up, they're like, hey, good news. We now have that was when they told me about the Journeyman. So I was like, okay, well, let me see if I have the room. And I just barely had enough room, the way that I had built it, to be able to fit that 48-inch long rail on there. And then they were like, hey, just kidding, now we got the Foreman. I was like, oh crap. So I had to measure front to back, and there's just barely enough space for a Foreman to operate under there, but it works. And I have a 4x4 CNC machine in this tiny little, if you look at it from the outside, you'd never suspect that the inside of my shop looks like the way it does.
Yeah. How many CNC machines do you have in your 1,100 square foot or whatever it is?
No, 284 square feet.
Yeah, I don't know where I got 11 from. 284.
11 feet wide by 22 deep. So,
okay.
I have 3 CNCs in here. I have a Pro Foreman under my main workstation. I have a Elite Woodworker, and that's kind of halfway under my miter station at the back of the shop, and then I built an enclosure around it, so it kind of juts out from the front of the miter station. But having an enclosure is great. You wouldn't think that even with just 1/2-inch thick plywood and thin plexiglass, it would dampen the noise as much as it does, but it just really significantly dampens the noise when I have the doors closed. And I mean, not to mention the dust, containing the dust just in that space. I have to vacuum that out pretty regularly, but it keeps it from, those fine airborne particles from just floating around all over the shop.
Yeah. Do you use dust in the enclosure?
Yes. So I've got dust collection in both of them, and there's not a whole lot of overhead room being under the bench. The bottom of the bench is pretty close to the top of the CNC. So there's not a whole lot of room for me to get a dust hose kind of in a place where you can access any part of the machine, but it not be too long and droopy that it gets in the way.
I got you.
But I did just put in who makes it? Mullet. Mullet sent me their kind of like articulating
the boom
dust boom. Yeah. So I was able to kind of route it around, and it's adjustable, so I can just loosen a knob and bend it to wherever I need if it turns out that it's not in the best place. But yeah, so I mean, you do have to be a little bit creative with how you set everything up, because it's not just the footprint of the machine; it's also the square footage footprint. It's also the height that you got to take into consideration, and then the additional height that you'll need to be able to get your dust collection up there too. So you don't want to run it without dust collection. So you do have to account for that.
Yeah.
Sorry, you just do.
Yeah.
Now I run mine without the dust boot on all the time, but only because I'm making videos. And if the dust boot was on it, you wouldn't really be able to see anything.
Yeah.
So I have to do a lot of vacuuming, but I do that out of love because I love you guys and I want you to see what my machine's doing.
Oh,
I feel like I've been rambling. Sorry.
no, it's all good. This is talking about like the way you save space, but I do want to play the second part of this video because you do kind of get into the more of the specifics of how you kind of laid things out ahead of time and the way you planned for it.
Yeah.
So let's talk about that kind of.
Roll that beautiful bean footage.
This gives you a lot more options to be able to do that. So if you've been putting off getting a CNC because you don't think you have enough room in your shop, friend, I'm here to tell you, you do. Probably. The trick is when you're planning out your shop setup, start thinking not in terms of surface area, but in terms of volume. For example, this is a top-down view of my shop and the length and width footprint of each tool in my shop drawn to scale. If I'm only looking at these two dimensions, it's starting to look pretty crammed in there. But when you consider height, you start to see a ton more space open up. Rather than each tool having dedicated floor space, I can stack tools to take advantage of that third dimension, vertical space. Knowing that, I'm going to mount my Onefinity on a base with casters that I can roll in and out from under the outfeed of my main workstation, then build the rest of the workstation around that. Yeah, the machine's going to sit a little bit lower than normal working height, but when I really think about it, I don't actually need it at normal working height. The only time I'm up close and personal with the machine is when I'm either swapping out material or changing bits, so it's really no biggie to have to kneel down for a few minutes at a time. So if you've been putting off getting a CNC, whether Onefinity or any other machine, because you don't think that you have enough space in your shop, I don't know, give it another look. You might be surprised. All right, well that's it for me. My rolling base is done, so I'm gonna finish putting this machine together, get this bad boy up and running. I hope you found this helpful. Hope to see you on the next one. Thanks for watching. Y'all be good.
That was before I had ever actually even put the machine together and ran it. I had it. I was building my shop around it, but I hadn't actually used it
That was
yet.
the first video you'd ever made for Onefinity. So
Yeah.
it's crazy.
Yeah, and so it's hard to look at old videos because they're just like, ugh, you know. And I think that everybody looks at their work, whether it's videos or your woodworking projects. You look back to stuff that you did early on, you kind of wince, you know. It's a little embarrassing to yourself, but you know, I think it's better over time.
I was about to say, I mean, like, yes, maybe it's a little cringy to look back at that. I know I have the same feelings when I look at my early videos, especially.
I would say the earring era was the earring era was a little different.
I was still in college there, yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, my ears used to be pierced.
And he had these big,
I did. I had some nice diamond.
big
studs.
wrapper diamond studs, and they were sweet.
My grandma got those for me, believe it or
Did
not.
she really?
Yeah. But it just goes to show you, like, you can go from having no experience with the CNC and literally just trying to figure out how you can fit it into your shop to just a few years later, literally teaching thousands of people how to use it. So not only is it just about, you know, I'm trying to come up with words here, and my words aren't working, Morgan. I need some help.
Brother, if you were looking to me about getting your words to come out right, you're barking up the wrong tree.
Oh man. But no, it's one of those things where it's like, yes, like there's a lot to consider and space is a big part of it. But if space is the only thing that's holding you back, there are ways to get around that.
Yeah. So one, I have a machinist, the smallest one we make, and that has a 16 by 16 cutting area. But that one I mounted on my wall because I was pretty well tapped out on floor space, and it doesn't take up a whole lot, but I mean, it would still be, I mean, there's really, really very small space in here, but on the wall takes up no additional floor space, and it doesn't stick out so far that like I have kind of a walkway between like the one side of my shop and like the big workstation. And so it's on this wall, and it doesn't stick so far out that I have to like scoot, bend my neck to scoot by it or anything. So it really does save space putting a machine on the wall that you wouldn't otherwise have,
It sticks out about 20 to 25 inches, depending on which model. 25 at most, 19, I think, is like the least stick out. But I mean, if you think you have a workbench that you mount that above, or some free space on the wall, and like you said, you can have other things beneath that, even if it's on the wall, not just when it's underneath the table. So
yeah, mine's up on the wall, and I have a big tool chest sitting underneath that machine.
Yeah. So I know I have mine on the wall, and I have a printer. Well, it's not a running 3D printer, obviously. 3D printers and sawdust don't go together. But right now, I've got a big printer sitting under there just for storage. It's not like you're losing all of the space on the floor just because you put a machine on the wall. Now, if you put something like a journeyman, like I've got on the wall here, obviously with that thing being a 4-foot long rail, it's got a 6-foot wide footprint. It takes up 6 of the 8 feet that go to the ceiling. So I don't have as much space below or on top of that. But for like the woodworkers, especially, you still have most of the wall available to you. So
yeah. Trying to think if there's anything else that I said in the video. It's just one of those things where I needed to start making videos and working, because the shop build out I was doing all that in between employment opportunities, we'll call it that. I left my old job and started doing that, and I was like, wait a minute, I've got bills I got to pay. I got to start making videos. So I was like, I was still building out the shop. I wanted it totally done before I started, showing it on video and stuff. But I kind of was able to take that story of like, okay, well, this is the story. I'm building out the shop, and I'm doing it with the thought of having a CNC in here in mind, and building it for that purpose. And so, I hadn't even used the machine or fully assembled it at that point. I was just putting it together. So I've learned a lot since then. And so that's another thing that, like, I look back at this video, I'm like, I could have said so much more. I could have given so much more detail. I didn't have the details yet because I was literally in the middle of it.
Yeah. Well, okay. Well, here, what details, having seen it now, you just watched it, what would you change about what you did?
Well, like actually providing the details about the actual space that you're going to need around the machine, because we get that question a lot. I know that the machine is this big, or the cutting area is this big, but how big is the actual machine? How much space do I need to account for if I want to make an enclosure, or if deciding if I can even fit one in my shop or not? So I didn't explain those specifics because honestly, I think at that point I didn't even know them myself. But it was just more of a generality, a concept, like, hey, you can get this in here if you just have a little bit more space. Exactly how much, I don't know, but give yourself some buffer and you can get it in here.
Well, when you think about, like, you said you think about what is the footprint of the machine, but leaving some buffer room. And a lot of people don't think about things like, yes, you have the machine that is sitting on your tabletop, obviously, but you also have a controller that bolts to the front of the machine. So you've got to have some room in the front for the screen, whether it's the Masso or Buildbotics. Either way, you have a screen that's going to stick out in the front left corner. You have either a controller or a power supply in the black box. That's going to take up another, let's say a square foot on the side of your table, and it's going to stick out an extra 6 inches. So you've got to think about that and plan for that space too. It's not just the machine on top. It's the machine, the wires, the controller. If you have a spindle, you have a VFD that has to be mounted somewhere. So there's a lot of things that you have to take into consideration. But at the same time, you can't get hung up on everything has to be planned out perfectly before, because what really matters is once you start using that machine, what is going to be the setup that increases your workflow, makes it easy to set up, load your file, change your bit, things like that. What works for you? It's not going to be the same answer for everybody. Obviously, Morgan has his under his out feed. He pulls it out, he sets it up, and he's ready to go. And, that's not a big deal to him. If you're 70 or 80 years old, you may not have the ability to get up and down from the ground that easy. So that may not be an option, but a wall mount where you can stand up the whole time and you don't even have to bend over at the waist, that might be something that's even better for you. So it's weighing the pros and cons of each of the layouts and your specific situation.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's kind of what I was trying to that's what I was trying to convey in that first video. Because I wasn't thrilled about, because I tried to get permits for building a much bigger shop, but it would have to be in front of my house because my house is set all the way to the back of the property. And they said, no, you can't have outbuildings in front of your house. I don't even live in an HOA. It's just the city planning and zoning committee that
Florida, man, they don't have rules.
they basically act as the HOA. And I was mad at them for telling me what to do. But anyway, I wasn't thrilled about the size of the shop. I wanted something at least a little bit bigger. But even just dealing with the size that I had to work with, I'm not even sure where I was going with that. I think that was what I really wanted to convey, is like, because I know that other people have similar frustrations. They have the spatial restrictions that they don't feel like they can do what they really are capable of because of space. And I wanted it to be kind of a word of encouragement, that if you want to get into CNC, you can get in there.
Just do what works for you.
Yeah. And if you, here's so just to have kind of a little bit more of a pro Onefinity message here. If you want to get a CNC in your shop and you don't feel like you have the space, but you think that you might, if you just rearrange some things and you got to get creative, Onefinity will be the best way to get creative with your with how you get a machine in your shop. Because they're modular, they can be put on a QCW and put low. They can be put up on the wall. Other machines, they're built to factory beds. You don't have that kind of flexibility with. So,
yeah. I've seen people take a chain hoist and they'll put it on a platform that they can raise and lower, so it sits way up near the ceiling when they're not using it, and then they just lower it down.
I've seen that too. That's super cool.
That doesn't even take up space on your wall. So
I know. And I've got in my shop, I've got I've got open trusses. So like I didn't just come across with drywall. I went in between each truss because I wanted that look. But yeah, I mean, that's all structural load bearing studs that I could put a hoist up to.
Yeah.
And I could hang another machine from that technically. But you wouldn't be able to run it suspended. It would have to be on something.
I mean,
you wouldn't run it suspended because
you wouldn't want to. You'd want it to lower down and have some legs that pop out or something for stability.
Right, because if it was suspended, it would just be like swinging around.
I mean, yeah, theoretically speaking, you could run it and it would come out fine because the machine is moving with everything else as it swings, but it would be very unsafe.
I feel like it would pull my roof down. Like I feel like it would destroy the building.
In your case, it probably would.
Yeah,
but you have a smaller building too, so it's one of those things where we don't suggest it, just don't do it.
Yeah.
But I do have a really cool idea I've been sitting on for a while that I'm not going to tell you what it is because I don't want someone else to do it, but I'm going to do it.
My original idea was actually, it was when I first got the first woodworker that you guys sent me. My original idea was to put it on a flip top table and use that as my outfeed. So make the top, the height of the top flush with the table saw, or just slightly under, and then have the CNC mounted upside down on the bottom. So like you could flip it up, put material on, change your bits, start running it, and then flip it over. But I feel like it would still want to move around so much that it wouldn't be safe to use that as my table saw outfeed while the machine's running underneath.
Yeah, you probably.
But I did build the flip top table and everything, and then just decided against it.
Well, Drew Fisher, he has a table that he's designed, and I know a ton of people have bought the files for it. And it does that where it flips. It might just flip vertically. I don't know if it flips a full 180, but it will allow you to tilt it and set it up and do that similar thing. Maybe not upside down, but it allows you to have the adjustability of moving that around like that. But you also have the option of the rolling folding stand, which does that as well. And you don't have to build all of the components for it, I guess.
Yeah. I would like to see somebody run one upside down at some point. Like, I see no reason why it wouldn't work if the
it'll work.
If the material is secured on there, right, then the only thing I could think of is maybe dust falling down into the motor.
Well, here's the deal. When you turn the router on and the motor starts spinning, it pulls air from the head where like the bluish green plastic is, and it pushes
it out. So it would just blow it away.
I mean, it's going to make a huge mess, but yes. But yeah, now that
that's my challenge to Onefinity users everywhere. I want to see your machine running upside down.
I said I wasn't going to tell you, but that's what I was planning on doing with.
Dang it! I ruined your surprise. I'm sorry.
But yeah, doing that with an air weight. So
yeah, that'd be cool.
Yeah. So something I need to do. It's just one of those things that takes time.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, it's a whole. Yeah, it would be. I mean, they're just even the smallest one, the machinist. There's parts of that are still pretty heavy. Yeah. So like having to hold something upside down while you're screwing it in, like that'd be hard. So
it still weighs 125 pounds. So
yeah,
I'll probably put it on a piece of plywood and then have someone help me flip it over that way. It'd be a lot easier.
That's probably a better idea.
So, but
anyway, I think we've just about covered the that first video because it was so short. The videos were very short early on.
And I don't know how much we've actually helped you people, but we hope this is helpful. If nothing else, maybe it'll inspire you to at least consider making something happen.
Yeah. Or even if you have a CNC already, but you don't have the big boy and you want to upgrade to the big boy, maybe this was a little bit helpful. Maybe now you see there's a space that you didn't see before.
I hope so.
Yeah. Well, if not, sorry. We appreciate you guys listening to it anyway. And we hope that we didn't bore you to death so badly that you won't come back for the next
one. In other news, a couple just housekeeping items. We still have the Woodworkers versus Cancer raffle going on that goes through September the 18th. We'll be picking a winner and announcing that on the 19th. And we really hope you guys will get involved with that. It's for a really good cause. Again, it is $30 for one, $50 for two, or $100 for 5 entries. And every additional $100 gets you an additional 5 entries. So please go check that out. If nothing else, you're donating money for a good cause, and you have a good chance at winning a pretty cool Onefinity CNC with some awesome accessories. So be sure to go check that out. We will make sure to put some more posts up on social media about that as well, so you can find that info. And we hope you guys have a great week.
All right. Y'all have a good weekend.
Yeah.
Friday. Yeah. Have a great weekend, guys.
Make something happen this weekend.
All right. Y'all be good.
Bye.
play. We've got stories for your day. From Onefinity, it's clear to see the finest CNC. It's the Cutting Edge Podcast. Let's take a flight with designs and tools that ignite. From wood to steel, we peel and reveal the art of making done just right. Tips and tricks that elevate craftsmanship that's first rate. Join the fun, we've just begun. The cutting edge awaits. On this journey side by side, hear the stories far and wide. From dream to deed with utmost speed, where passion takes its stride. It's the Cutting Edge Podcast. Let's take a flight with designs and tools that ignite. From wood to steel, we peel and reveal the art of making done just right.